Hey, everybody, welcome back. Devin UG, the original Grognard. Trying something a little bit different with my camera setup. I've tried to back the camera higher up away from the table. The last few unboxings I've done, I haven't been real happy with it because the camera is right up in the box, and I don't feel that you're getting a chance to see everything real clearly because I have the camera set so low, but just the way my table is set up and the chair and everything else, I just the camera is too close, I think, but I kind of need it that way for how I sit. So we're going to try something a little bit differently. I've got the camera backed out much further this time. I can probably go further back, but I think for unboxing purposes, I think this will probably work pretty good. And we're not really doing an unboxing this time. We are taking a look at the Solo Assistant for Nations of War World of War 85. I was kind of going to go over this when I do a playthrough of World of War 85, but as I was playing a game here against myself, pretty well, not most of my games are against myself, but off camera, just so I could refamiliarize myself with the World of War 85 rules, because I want to make sure that I'm not hitting the rule book every 5 seconds. And I tend to overthink things, and there were a lot of things that cropped up when I was doing my test game, and it's like, does it actually work that way, or does it work this way, or am I thinking of another? It's the same problem I run into with most similar games, especially when like I do tactical game. Well, this is a tactical game. Uh, I get. Was that an ASL rule? Was that an advanced Tobruk system rule? Was that a lock and load rule? So, so it was pretty much clearing up, making sure that when I do the recording of the playthrough, that the gameplay goes smoothly. And I needed to have a shot at working with the solo assistant. Now, I've worked with the lock and load tactical solo assistant, but I haven't really ever done anything with the Nations of War World of War 85 solo assistant. So I figured I should probably do it on my own. And yeah, it's a good thing I did. There were some issues, but I was able to get it ironed out in time, and it gave me enough experience that all right, yeah, now I understand how these cards operate, how the solo assistant works, so that when I do the live playthrough or recorded playthrough, whatever the hell you want to call it, there's no problems. And because I hate interrupting my game with going to the rulebook, nobody likes that. Nobody likes waiting for someone to check on the rules when they're supposed to be doing a playthrough. At least I don't. I'm going to assume everybody else doesn't either. So I was going to kind of go over the solo assistant, but I realized it was big enough that it deserves its own video. And kind of this is what we're looking at right here. And if you've watched my unboxings or other people's unboxings, because there's been a bunch of them here lately, there's always people always say it's really similar to the Lock and Load Tactical Solo, and is based on the Company of Heroes solo that Uwe did over at Academy Games. But we haven't really said much beyond that. And if you don't know either one of those systems, you're not really knowing what we're talking about. So I figured, yeah, let's go ahead and do a little detailed a walkthrough on this. So first of all, it's a solo assistant. Okay, the rules are not that bad. I mean, we've got technically 28 pages of rules, but we've got 3 pages of glossary and some designer notes, and then some walkthroughs, examples of play. Again, Lock and Load Tactical, great big font, nice color plates, some of the best rule books in the business, I think. So yeah, here we go through the walkthrough, several pages of the walkthrough. And really, when you get down to it, I mean, there's only like 15 pages of rules. And again, these are really big. You got big charts. You've got, important notes. You've got pictures all over the place, big font. So, 15 pages of rules, which would probably, well, in an ASL rule book would probably been about 5 pages of rules. So don't get overwhelmed with what seems to be a lot of rules, because I mean, it's meaty enough, but there's not a lot of rules there. It just takes up a lot of space because the font's really big. So, what is the Solo Assistant? Solo Assistant is a way for you to play the game with somewhat of an, well, it is an AI system. I was going to say programmed AI, but it's not really a programmed AI. And what I mean by programmed AI, those of you who may be familiar with like Victory Games, Open Fire, Ambush series, those are programmed. You move into a hex, you check a paragraph, you check something. It's the entire thing is set up, and it unfolds in front of you. But if you play the same scenario the second time, it's still going to unfold the same way. You play it a third time, it's going to unfold the same way. That's what I mean more by programmed AI. This AI is more freeform, and it is kind of conditional, and it's whereas programmed AI, maybe to put it in computer terms, C or C plus. This is more basic, written in BASIC. If we were to put this into computer terms, this is a lot of if, thens, ands, ors commands. So you don't have the tight, excuse me, you don't have a perfectly 100% tight AI that will sometimes do something stupid or something that doesn't make sense. However, these are set up in a way that these can be used with any scenario for Nations of War, World of War in existence. That's kind of the trade-off. With a programmed AI, you're not going to get a lot of scenarios because it takes so long to set up the AI, and you're only going to have, you know, once you play a scenario through, you know how the scenario is going to progress. This is set up, it's a little bit more loosey-goosey, fast and furious, maybe not as intelligent as a human opponent, but then again, hey, I'm not the cleverest person in the world. The Solo Assistant is played smarter than me in some cases, from what I found out. And it's an assistant. That's what what you need to realize. Not every decision is going to be made by the cards. You are going to have to step in and make some decisions from time to time, but it's going to handle most of the heavy load. You decide, all right, this is the unit we're going to activate. So let's start drawing the cards and see what it does. It'll give you what it tells you to do, but then sometimes you have to make decisions. I've played other solitaire systems before, notably, again, like I said, Ambush, and like Solitaire Advanced Squad Leader. Yeah, that broke me. But there are some times when I wish the cards were just a touch tighter, or they had a little bit more meat to them. For example, as I was playing, I had the Czechoslovakians when I was playing. They were coming down this road, and I had a couple West Germans up here, and I had offboard artillery dispensed minelets, and I just littered the area, as the West Germans just littered this entire area. Well, there were occasionally times when it would come up where a command would give, move towards, closest enemy. Do I move directly towards it? Do I have the option of driving around the minefields? Do I have to go through the minefields? And that's just a little something that I wish was just a little bit tighter with the cards. It would require a little bit more work, although I don't think that much. There is a command in here where sometimes it'll tell you to do an LRM, a low risk move. Usually disrupted units moving away. Occasionally, I came across one where it was a command card would order you to advance with the lowest risk move. I wish there was a little bit more of that. I wish that there was like high risk moves. All right, if you're moving, move, or it was delineated more directly by safest route, most direct route. Just something to give a little bit more direction on how the units move. So, like, say if I had a unit here, and there was a German unit here, and it said, and the cards basically say move towards. Well, what if there's a minefield there and there? Or what if there's a minefield there? So, well, let's go ahead and just pull out a couple units real quick so I can show what I'm talking about. All right, so say this unit, zoom in just a touch so people can kind of see what I'm talking about. So say we got this T55. They get the order, move towards the enemy. Actually, let's even say that the enemy is right there. Move towards. Do I move through the minefield? Would an opponent actually move through a minefield? Well, they might. You know, it's always possible. But wouldn't it make more sense to kind of a preservation of forces to move around? Like maybe to here and then here? You know, I just wish there was just a little bit more definition like that. So it's really open to interpretation. But say if there was LRM, move towards the closest enemy, low risk maneuver or high risk. Say you get a low risk, it's like, all right, try to get there the safest way possible. That definitely tells you to move around the minefield. Well, maybe you have another card that says high risk move towards closest enemy, high risk move. Well, then they would go through the minefield. So really, I mean, that's kind of the only complaint I really have. I mean, for the most part, the solo assistant is a delight to play against. And for the most part, since I wasn't really 100% playing against myself, excuse me, I didn't know what the cards were going to do, and that kind of made it exciting for me again. I mean, I have fun, and I get excitement when I play games. But when you're playing against yourself, you got a pretty good idea, you know what you're going to do. So some of the mystery of the game is taken away when you play solitaire. This gave me that mystery back because I wasn't exactly sure how aggressive the deck was going to be. I knew for the most part, you can kind of generally guess that yes, the solo assistant is going to have the units moving towards the closest enemies or towards the victory objective. So you got a kind of a good idea what the AI is going to do, but not how exactly each stacker unit is going to get there. So I thought that was just fabulous for me. I mean, I kind of had an overall, but then again, when you're playing an opponent and you have victory locations, you know the opponent's going to move towards the victory locations. Now, there have been some complaints. People have complained that the AI, that the deck does stupid things. Well, I wouldn't run that, you know, and I hear this a lot from the tactical side of things, because that has gotten more play than this. Well, I would never run that squad across the street in front of a machine gun. Okay, you wouldn't. You're not the opponent. You're not the deck. And just because you wouldn't doesn't mean your opponent wouldn't do that. I mean, hell, if I thought it would look thematically brilliant and could give me an edge, yeah, I'll run that squad across the road in front of a machine gun. I'll do that in a heartbeat. So there's a careful balance you have to approach this. That you can follow the deck 100%, but they're still going to leave you, occasionally you're going to leave your head scratching your head and wondering, okay, is this 100% what this command is supposed to do? Or you can just use it as a very vague guideline. It's like, all right, move this unit. Okay, I'll move this unit however I want. But I think to get the maximum enjoyment, those are the two extremes of how to play it. But I think the best enjoyment that can be gotten out of the solo assistant is if there's a little bit of a mix. Let the deck make the decisions, and you only step in on occasions where you really think that you need to step in. As like for one good example is how the deck handles artillery. I don't think it handles artillery the best, and by that I mean the way I would do it. And again, here I am, just because I don't do something this way doesn't mean somebody else wouldn't do it some way. So even I am having a little bit of a hard time getting letting the deck do its job. But basically, so what I did is that whenever a situation came up where the checks would activate, and the first thing I would do is, all right, can't artillery do anything? I would step in and override, and it's like, all right, it's the beginning of my turn. all right, I've got the headquarters. They can see a target before I do anything else. I am making the executive decision that the artillery is going to try to fire. That's just what I do, just because I don't think that the deck does a real good job of handling artillery. I could be wrong. Again, I've played one game. It was 7 turns. I went through the deck maybe 1.5 times, adding in all the shuffling. I'm just theory crafting at this point. But that is one executive decision that I made on my end, that I'm going to blast away with artillery for the opponent, for the deck, whenever I get the chance. Other than that, you kind of got to find that balance. It's like, how much control do you want to give the deck? How much do you want to think for the deck? And you got to kind of find out what works for you. Because sometimes there will be commands that, like the minefield example, says move towards enemy. Well, by definition, I'm going to move right through the minefield. All right, some people might do that. Some people might not. If there were just a few more commands, low risk, here we got this right here. AoE order, under red, fire, can't fire, do a low risk move. If there were more low risk moves and add in high risk moves, I think that would extremely help the movement aspect. And really, I guess that's really the only real problem I have with it. One of the other cool things is that if you get a move command and you're moving towards something and you've got the movement to be able to assault, you want to assault, go ahead and assault with it. You don't have moving assaults, or there is the occasional moving assault order or assault order, but the rules have set it up so that if you're moving and you find that you're moving into a situation where it might be a good idea to assault, like say you've got 2 platoons of T-80s and they are moving forward and move adjacent to a disrupted Leo, it might be a good idea for them to assault that Leo, because that's kind of a low risk assault on their part. If you got one step of Soviet armor and you're going to be moving towards a victory location that's in a city with 2 infantry in it, 2 undisrupted infantry, probably not going to want to assault that hex. But, it leaves it open for your interpretation of that. And sometimes it says, hey, assault closest, disrupted, undisrupted, what have you. And it doesn't really do the initial, when I was playing it initially, the first time, the Soviets came down this way, and I'll get more into this when I do my actual video playthrough, describing the terrain types and everything. But basically, ended up having a couple Leos, and I think wasn't a Jaeger. What was it? Which one was it? Oh, it was a Martyr. Martyr one with a Milan system on it. Was up here, but if you kind of notice, it's got that pesky little black triangle, which means it's got a minimum range of 3 hexes with the missile system. Yeah, if you know the rules at all, line of sight is blocked if you go more than 2 hexes in cultivated or woods. There's lots of cultivated and lots of woods here, so unless it was sitting on the ridgeline firing something down in the valley, or was in the valley firing something that was just on the ridgeline, that missile launcher was going to be pointless, because if it's sitting right here and the enemy's right here, well, that's within the minimum range and you can't fire. But anyways, that's a tactical problem that you have to figure out. But I had 2 Leos and I had that missile system up here, and when the Czechs came down, they just blew through the defenses up here. One of the Leo got disrupted and was forced to retreat. I pulled the Martyr back more towards the city, but they just blew through this. But by the time they got to right about here, they were kind of scattered. So as they came at the city, they started doing it in penny packs, and I mean, they're just kind of this big half moon around the village by the end of the game of just dead vehicles, because I kind of penny packed them out. Now, since really from this hex you only have a line of sight of 2, what I did is I went off of what the cards and says move towards. What I should have done was try to build up a little bit consolidate my forces. Now, and this was a decision I would have had to have made for the solo system, because the solo system really doesn't do that. I should have built up, instead of penny packing them in, I should have built up, a group of 6 or 7 units. But then again, that's a decision a player has to make for the solo assistant. So I hope that kind of makes sense. All right, so 20 minutes. I've gone much longer than I actually wanted to about me highlighting the pros and the cons of this. Let's get to the actual mechanics of how the solo deck is supposed to work. First off, you've got a deck of cards that are the base, just normal base command cards. And there's, I'll say 36, 42, something like that, of these cards. And you'll know that they're just normal command cards, is that they don't have anything at this bottom bar. Okay, so that there is the occasional symbol, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Yeah, here's another one of those. And another one. But for the most part, that's how you were able to tell this is the base deck. Every time you play the game is going to include every one of these cards in it. Now, what is that little command, that icon? That right there? Basically, if you ever draw this card during play, you go through, execute the card, and then that's the chance that you have to roll on 2d6 or more. And if you roll more than that, you reshuffle the discarded cards into the draw pile. So normally you reshuffle all cards when you get to the marker removal phase, be it at the end of the turn or at the start of each formation. Well, not each formation, the formation that you're using the solo assistant for. So as I was playing, if I draw one of the West German formations, you get to the marker removal phase, you don't do it at that point. I pulled the Czech formation, then yes, I would reshuffle during the marker removal phase for the Czech formation, and then at the end of the turn, when all the markers are removed, that you also reshuffle the deck at that point. But, like I said, there is a chance, come on, there we go, that if a card with this comes up on it, you roll it, and then you reshuffle. So that's how you reshuffle the deck. All right, so these are all the cards that you start off with. Then you've got a deck of, oh, come on, I don't know why this is not focusing. There we go. You've got these cards that have got this little shield on it. If your overall posture in the scenario that the opponent or that the assistant is using is a defensive, then you're going to be using cards from the defensive deck. Now, these will have orders more suited towards a defensive fight. Now, you only take 12 of these, be it if you're on the defensive posture, which what these cards are, or if you're running the solo assistant with a more offensive posture, you take the cards that have got the offensive offensive posture marker on it, and then you'll use these, and these are more offensively aligned commands. I think there are 18 of both the offensive and defense cards. And depending on what posture the solo assistant is running, you either take the cards from the offensive or the defensive deck. And you only take 12 of them. I think there are 18. Let me check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Hey, I was right. There are 18 of them. So you take 12 of them, and they get shuffled in with the base deck. Now, it also has the option that you can, at the beginning of the game or at your choice, you can either be facing a less competent AI opponent or a more competent AI opponent. So you can either do that randomly, roll a d6, you roll a 1, you're facing against a less competent AI opponent. If you roll a 5 or 6, you're facing a more competent opponent. Or you can just ignore that, or you can just say one way or another. If you're facing a less competent opponent, you only get 6 cards from whatever posture deck. If you're facing a more competent opponent, then you get all 18 cards from the posture deck. So that's how you, and then once you decide that, you just take them all, you shuffle them all together, whatever your preferred shuffling method is. And again, these are great. These are full-sized, tarot-sized cards, really big. I know I've showed them before, but here's a regular poker-sized card, the regular trading cards, regular cards versus the tarot size. So, all right, so that's how you populate the deck. Great, we've got the deck populated. What does that mean? Well, you set it off to the side someplace, kind of like over here with both either the offensive or defensive posture cards shuffled in. I'm not going to shuffle them in, right? Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead because, yeah, let's go ahead and set it up because I know I'm going to be playing this in the future. I'm going to be playing with the Germans running the solo assistant. Germans are on defense on this one. They're defending that village and preventing the Czechs from exiting units off the board. So they're in a defensive posture. So we use the defensive posture deck. And yeah, that's 52 card pickup. That's one way to shuffle the cards. And I'm not going to say it's a competent or incompetent opponent. I'm just going to go base. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And those will get shuffled in with the regular cards. I'll shuffle those later. All right, so once you got them shuffled, shuffle. You just go ahead and set it off to the side. Go through the game just as normal. You got your formation cards up here. Your formation deck, you pull the cards. Hey, 241 Panzer. That's the Germans. I've got the Germans playing on as the solo assistant. Bam. Now we're into the solo assistant's turn. You look at the board, and there's several different ways you can approach it. I don't have any counters set up, although probably should throw some out there just for kind of an example. All right, so there's two ways you can approach it. Well, not really two ways to approach it. What you do is you decide on a hex, a unit, or a stack that you want to try drawing the orders for first. So let's say we want to draw orders for this unit right here. All right, so, well, you pull a card. You take a look. Well, first of all, you determine if you're within line of sight of anything, or at least this is what I do. I determine if it's within the line of sight of anything or not, because that does make a difference. Well, let's see. No, but they are in line of sight over there. No, actually, it would be in line. No, I don't think so. Well, let's just say, okay, let's do that just to make it easy. All right, so let's say not in line of sight of those two, but he is in line of sight of there. Okay, so we've got a unit that we're in line of sight of. Now we got to determine if we're at point blank, standard, or extreme range. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're at 8 hexes away. So we look at our counter. Armor piercing, range is 11. So at 8 hexes out, it's at standard range. If it was at point blank range, it would have to be 5 hexes or less. And if it was 12 hexes or more, then it would be extreme range. So, and it's going to be different every time you pull or check for a formation, because you go off of the range of the unit. So, or whatever, if it's high explosive or if it's close to, soft target, you would use the high explosive value. But for this case, since we're looking at another enemy tank, we're using the armor piercing modifiers. So it's going to be different for each unit. So for example, point blank range on the Leopard is 5 hexes. Point blank range for infantry is 1. So you kind of got to pay attention to what unit you're activating and to figure out what exactly, if you're point blank, standard, or extreme range, because that is what's going to determine what orders you follow. So you pull a card. Say we pull a card for this. All right, you've got these colored hexes right here. You've got 3. You've got red, yellow, and occasionally you'll have a blue. And basically it goes off of what your range is. If you're at point blank range, you go off of the red command. If you're at standard range, you go off the yellow command. And if you're at extreme range, you go off the blue. Now, not all cards have a blue command. So we're looking at this card. We pull this card. We're at standard range. So that means we follow the yellow hex orders. And you just read them left to right, top to bottom. And each triangle is a separate command. So we look at the first one, onboard indirect fire. So that means if we were to draw this card, if we had onboard artillery, he would act as a spotter to try to call in the artillery on that. All right, pretty cool. Pretty self-explanatory. What if there is no onboard indirect fire? Well, then you go to the next triangle. Move and fire. Okay? Well, this does prove a little bit of a problem because if we move and fire, if we move one hex, well, we're no longer in line of sight. So that's not really a valid command. Could we move here and fire? Yeah, probably. But we may even want to say that it's like, no, we're not going to do the move and fire because if we move towards him, we're going to be out of line of sight. If we move away, we're going to be out of line of sight. We could move, you could move, parallel to the target. And actually, that would be the only other hex you could move to that would remain line of sight on those guys right there. So since it's not really a valid command, unless you want to move the one hex, again, this is where you as the player sometimes have to make decisions for the assistant. As written, move and fire, the only thing that it could do would be to move right there and fire. If you don't think that's a valid move, or I don't want to say if you don't want to do it, basically at the end of the day, it's all your decisions. But say you just decide, all right, it's not a valid move and fire. There's not a valid move and fire you can do. Then, okay, so that was the second command we didn't. Then you've got the third command, fire closest vehicle. So then you would fire and go through the normal fire procedure of firing at one of those two vehicles. And pretty much that's the same for everything. So like say if we were at point blank with this unit, assault if your firepower is greater than the target's. Well, for the most part, all vehicles have a 2-4 melee. So that's not really being greater. However, if you had a stack of 2 units, then your assault would be greater than a single unit. Let's see if I can try to just explain this a little bit better. So say if you had 2 leopards and you had one T-55 there. If you got the assault, if you got the red, assault if firepower greater than the target's, well, your firepower is going to be greater than the target's because you're looking at 4 dice to his 2 dice. Then you would assault. So you running the computer, or the solo assistant would go 1 and then assault. Now, also playing as you, as soon as he moves right there, you're probably going to light him up with opportunity fire regardless. So you make the decision, if you're going to do the op fire, do the op fire. If he survives it, then he's going to assault you. So, like I said, there are decisions and things you have to take care of, but you let the deck do the heavy lifting on the decisions. There's just little itty bitty important decisions you have to make. All right. So now what happens if for some reason you're doing the medium range and none of those are apt? Or if you start off pulling for a unit that has no line of sight on anybody. So let's go ahead and let's say instead of drawing for this Leo, we decided to draw for this Leo that's in the city. Well, it doesn't have any line of sight on anybody at all. You want to activate him. None of the 3 color codes at the top are going to be apt because they're all reliant on line of sight. Well, if for some reason the color coded doesn't work, and if you, and this is the important thing, if you're at medium range and none of these work, you don't go to another color band. You immediately go down to secondary orders. So secondary orders are fulfilled or done if you're pulling for a unit that doesn't have anybody in line of sight, or if the unit you're pulling for is unable to fulfill any of the colored commands. Now, the thing about secondary is secondaries apply to any unit on the board. So you kind of got to be really aware where all the units are. So let's say for some reason we pulled the Leo didn't do this, or we're pulling for this Leo right here that doesn't have line of sight on anybody. Then you go through the secondary and go top to bottom. So highest firepower AoE furthest from player unit with lowest defensive bonus, then fire. It's like, wow, that's a mouthful. What does that mean? All right. So you take your highest, since this is a fire command, it's going to have to be someone who's in line of sight of somebody. So highest firepower AoE, which is enemy engage AE or not AoE, AEO, automated enemy opponent, which is the solo assistant. So highest firepower unit, furthest from a PU, that is a player unit, with the lowest DB defensive bonus. So we'll have to look at the board. We'll have to find the highest firepower when everything that's on the board right now, this is going to be the highest firepower. Well, because they're all the same. Furthest from a player unit, and the furthest player unit is going to be right here with the lowest defensive bonus. Well, what if we had something like that? Or better yet, let's do it a little bit, something like that. Say both of them are the equal distance away. I don't know if they are. I'm just doing this as an example. Lowest defensive bonus would be the cultivated. Forest has a higher defensive bonus than cultivated. So that command card, if you have the parameters, and as the way the board sits right now, you would have the parameters, this unit would shoot at that unit right there. Okay, well, what if we don't have that? You are unable to find any unit that fulfills that requirement. Well, you go to the next one. Disrupted AEO closest to a unit LRM away. Disrupted unit closest to an unit, which is an enemy unit. Low risk move away, which means you move away from, you take a look, you take a unit, one of your own formations or units that are disrupted, not formations, units that's disrupted. If it's really close to it's the closest to an enemy unit, then you do a low risk move away. It's possible that could trigger some op fire on your part, but the low risk means it tries to move in such a way that it's not going to get shot at, not go through minefields, and, just basically try preservation of forces. Well, what if that one doesn't work? Well, AoE closest to an ops complete unit in 0 defensive bonus or victory objective move towards. So if one of the enemy units is closest to an ops complete unit or in 0 defensive bonus or the victory location. So this one is really kind of nice because regardless, you're usually going to have, if it says or VO, there's always a VO that you can move towards. Then you have move towards. What does move towards mean? Well, we've already gone over that and how I think that just a little bit more tightening, like move towards LRM or SRM or HRM, low risk maneuver, high risk maneuver. Failing that, there's always, usually the bottom one is always execute victory conditions. Well, that's what this chart is for. Solo assistant behavior table. Occasionally, you'll have a command that says execute counteraction. If you're on defensive or if you're on offensive. And basically, you start at condition 1, and then just go like how you do normally a card. AoE moves onto the map. Okay, what if you don't have any areas? AoE is within LOS of most units. Move and fire. And you just follow it on down. There's occasionally, you'll have a command, execute victory conditions. So you've got, this is much different than the 3 massive player aid cards that are in Lock and Load Tactical that have the massive flow charts. I think this system is a lot easier because you don't have the massive flow chart you have to follow. So, and reason you just can't do anything on this card. Well, you discard and you pull another one. It's that easy. I have not run into a situation where I've not been able to do some order on the card in some way, shape, or form. So, again, as a quick recap, when you pull a card for something that is within the line of sight of an opponent's unit, you use the colored bands depending on what that unit's range is. If it's at point blank range, you use the red. If it's at normal range, you use yellow. If it's at extreme range, you use blue, or sometimes there isn't a blue. If for some reason you are unable to fulfill any of the colored commands, then you go to secondary. Secondary can be activated by any unit on the board. So, colored orders are only for a specific unit that you specifically pull for. If you get to secondary, secondary can be any unit of yours on the board, period. Now, after you get done, if for some reason you get done executing, say for some reason you pull this card and you're at point blank range and you're within range of something, then you do the fire. Well, then you're done. You've done the command. You resolve the combat on the map. Mark the unit with ops complete. And move on to the next unit. And you can pick the units in any order. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I would look for everything that was in line of sight first. I would do all units that had a line of sight on an enemy unit before I did units that were not in line of sight. And trust me, there were a lot of times I had units that were not in line of sight, especially on this map, because remember, with cultivated and forced, you can only see up to 2 hexes away. It's kind of what made this ridge line so important, because on the ridge line, you could see pretty much the entire valley, and the entire valley could see the ridge line, which is why I had so many West German units up here. But when the Czechs came down this road, and even though I laid out, 2 minefield artillery barrages, so the Czechs didn't care. They just rolled through, and they rolled right over my defenders, which was actually kind of surprising, because had I been playing the Czechs, I would not have been that successful. I wouldn't have even thought of being so aggressive that way. But yeah, that's basically the down and dirty of it. I did not want the video to go this long. But hey, if it took me this long to describe it in a way I think people understand, then so be it. But yeah, that's basically how the solo assistant. Now, there are going to be times where you're going to sit there and you're going to kind of scratch your head that this doesn't really work. And then if it doesn't, then just go on to the next one. And sometimes it may take you a little bit to figure out, okay, this one works, but how am I going to approach it? Like I said, if you're just telling somebody to move forward, all right, that's fine. What if there's minefields in the way? What if there's smoke in the way? There is some decision making the player has to make for the bot. And you know what? I'm okay with that, because really, I'm not making all the decisions. And it is still surprising me. And like I said, when I did it beforehand, I was in shock and awe that within 3 turns, the Czechs had destroyed 1 Leo platoon, routed a Leo platoon, and forced the Milan, or the Martyr APC with the Milans on it off the hill. It shot, and it was kind of nice. I mean, had I just been playing solo, I wouldn't have been that aggressive. So it's a nice change of pace. It has a different play style than what I normally play when I'm playing solitaire, and honestly, probably even different play style than everyone. And honestly, when you get down to it, Keith was the one that crafted this module. So basically, you're playing against Keith. This is really not the solo assistant. This is the solo assistant, the Keith solo assistant, because he's the one that wrote the cards. Now, as you play this, as you go through this, I would really recommend giving feedback to David and the crew. Email them or what have you, hit them up on the Facebook, and give them feedback on what worked, what didn't work, and what you'd like to see. There's nothing stopping David from printing up other cards in the future that you can just add into the deck with different commands on them to maybe clear things up a little bit. And like I said, I would love to see more commands with lowest move, highest move on them under a move towards order, because that gives you a little bit more definition of what the deck, of what you running the enemy units need to do. Maybe we'll see it someday, maybe we won't. But anyways, if you're going to play the solo assistant, honestly, I would really recommend giving feedback to David, giving feedback to Keith. Now, okay, yeah, I know. Not everybody's got this in their hands yet. I know. It's coming. Patience, Padawans. Everybody will get it in their hot little hands. I mean, they're on the rail cars. They've hit the States. And for, You know, it's in transport for our Pacific and European customers. But yeah, I think I've covered everything. I hope I haven't confused everybody, and thank you for sticking around if you're still here at the end. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms in the comment section below. I'll talk to everybody later. See ya!